everybody, it's Harrison with Maine Connects, your source for all things small business and real estate in Maine. A couple of articles came out recently that I want to dive into a little bit that are looking at the impacts of short-term rentals. And it's drawing a lot of attention to short-term rentals as potentially a major source of our housing crisis or our housing shortage. But I want to add a little perspective to that to maybe provide some visibility to the stats and trends that we are seeing that are showing that this is an impact, but maybe not the sizable impact we expect it to be. So the first story came out in Bar Harbor. They're estimating they're going to need an additional 616 housing units over the next 10 years. And that will just be to replace all of the units lost to short-term rental usage. So 600 homes in a community like Bar Harbor, which is not a large community, that's a lot of homes. It's a lot of properties to add. The first thing that comes to mind is, where are you going to put them? What does that do to things like traffic? What does that do to things like the resources like schools, etc.? 616 homes over a 10-year span is a lot to some of our smaller towns, even to some of our larger towns that can have a sizable impact. The second article that came out is Old Orchard Beach is voting on a moratorium on short-term rentals. And what that means is they would not approve or allow any more short-term rentals in the town of on short-term rentals. And what that means is they would not approve or allow any more short-term rentals in the town of Old Orchard Beach, one of our major tourist destinations, until they can do a thorough review of the impact of short-term rentals on the community. Now, I understand short-term rentals have an impact on the market, and I'll get into that in a second. But I think in many cases, this is drawing attention to short-term rentals as though they're the major cause of our housing shortage. And while they are a contributing factor, there's a lot of things to consider here. So let's dive in a little bit to some of the perspective on this. Maine has always been a second home market. We've always had between 30 and 40% of our buyers coming here from out of state. Now, in some cases, they're relocating here to live here. In some cases, they're investing here. They're buying a vacation home. And before short-term rentals were a thing, many of those vacation homes sat empty for most of the year. When you go up and down the coastline in Maine, many of those homes would be vacant for all but a handful of weeks a year because they were just strictly family vacation homes. So what's happening is those family vacation homes, now that short-term rentals are an easy source of income by using things like Airbnb and VRBO, booking a short-term rental is easier than it's ever been. A lot of those family vacation homes are being turned into short-term rentals when the family's not using them. Because 10 years ago, getting a short-term rental booked was not nearly as easy as it is now. So for those second home owners, it's a great way to create some income that offsets the cost of that home. So in many cases, these short-term rentals we're seeing are not new short-term rentals. They're homes that have always been used as vacation homes. Now they're just being used more often. Now, that does bring additional traffic and people into the area. So on one hand, it's great for our tourism industry and for all of our shops and restaurants and attractions. However, it does create traffic. It does create other activity along the beaches. And we are finding that those areas are more crowded now. So that's the first point. The second point is we are seeing investors come here and buying properties strictly to use them as short-term rentals. We have some of the best vacation areas you'll find anywhere, between the beaches, the lakes, the mountains. And what's interesting too is that our short-term rental market in some cases can be all four seasons. Maybe not along the beach, but when you get into areas like the mountains, you get around Sunday River and Sugarloaf, there are people that are looking for short-term rentals in those areas all year because you can come here for the warmer weather to go hiking and biking and be on the trails. You can be here for hunting. You can be here for skiing. You can be here for leaf peeping. You can be here a lot of the year and have various amenities and attractions that draw you here. So we do have areas that were previously not considered short-term rental markets that are becoming desirable to people who don't want to necessarily just come here to be on the beach or on the lake, but want to be in the woods, or they want to come here for hunting trips, or they want to come here to ski. And now those amenities are available to them. But lastly, I think the one thing that's beginning to concern many people in Maine is that we're also seeing short-term rentals pop up in areas where they've never been before. And that is areas like downtown Portland. It's also areas like our local neighborhoods. We are beginning to see homes in our local neighborhoods that would normally be owned as a primary residence for a family being turned into short-term rentals. So what that means is two things. One, those short-term rental owners can afford to pay more for that home. So that is part of our pricing problem, is that those short-term rental owners are coming into the market and paying more than a primary residence owner can pay. So that's driving our prices up. It's also taking primary homes away from people. But secondly, it's also introducing tourists and travelers to neighborhoods where they've really never been before. You now have people from out of the area staying in a neighborhood surrounded by other families, and they're there for a short period of time. That raises some concerns with people in the neighborhoods, but also in the general area, because as you take away single family homes from potential primary home owners, now you take a supply issue we already have and you make it worse. And then more importantly, you're introducing vacation and tourism housing into neighborhoods where it really doesn't belong. And Old Orchard Beach is really pointing at that as a concern they have. They're beginning to see short-term rentals in areas that they don't want them, because it is affecting the town, it is affecting traffic, and it's also affecting the ability of people to buy single-family primary homes in that town. While I agree, short-term rentals have definitely caused some of our housing problems in terms of supply and availability, and also pricing to a certain extent, it is not the only factor. We are still 30,000 or so housing units short in this state of what we need. A lot of that's come from population growth, some of that's come from conversion to investment properties, and some of that's come from conversion to short-term rentals. But Maine has always had a significant portion of its housing stock in vacation homes. So this is not a brand new issue, it's just a growing issue that many of these towns are trying to get their arms around before it becomes a bigger problem than it already is. I hope that helps. If you got any questions on short-term rentals, whether you own one, you're interested in them, or you just want to understand the issue of short-term rentals more, feel free to reach out. You can always find me at maineconnects.com or anywhere on social media. Hope to see you soon.